Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the fifth session of our Going Digital at the Speed of Business webinar series, presented by Customer Experience Update and Customer Contact Central, sponsored by Quadient. I'm Nicholas Rodriguez, the site editor of Customer Experience Update and Customer Contact Central, and I'm excited to bring you 6 fresh sessions in the digital transformation and customer experience space from experts who are going to bring you hard-earned insights about how to transform your business operations strategically to provide better experiences for your clients. I'm really looking forward to interviewing and talking with each participant in what will likely prove to be interesting and amusing conversations. And we've been recording all of them in case you had to miss any. So before we go any further, I did want to thank Quadient for sponsoring the webinar series and helping us make this happen. A NeoPost digital company, the Quadient portfolio of technology enables organizations to create better experiences for their customers through timely, personalized, optimized, and highly individualized communications for all channels. Quadient solutions bring together and activate the entire organization in the name of customer experience through better collaboration and visibility into the customer journey. Thanks again, Quadient. And on that note, please feel free to ask questions during today's session. You can do so by submitting them into the question panel on the right side of your screen. We will answer as many questions as we can by the end of the presentation. My lovely colleague Emily will be fielding your questions today. She will be happy to answer any questions you might have, so pull up the question panel and say hello to let her know that you're listening. And lastly, if you have any audio issues during today's presentation, you may choose to dial in by phone. To dial in by phone, select the More button in the upper right portion of your screen and then select the Switch to Phone option. So today, I'll be talking to Hilary Curran. As head of customer experience at Guru, Hilary leads Guru's customer success, support, and education initiatives. Before joining Guru, she honed her customer experience skills in various technical roles across the public, academic, and nonprofit sectors. An avid traveler, runner, and live music groupie, Hilary can be spotted jogging or dancing her way around Philadelphia, San Francisco, or any other major city. A fun fact about Hilary, she has a twin sister working in advertising. When they were younger, they would play pranks, but as they grew older, they would differentiate themselves. So at this time, I would like to pass things off to Hilary, so please go ahead, take it away.
Hi, it's great to meet you, Nick. I'm super excited to talk to you guys today. Like Nick mentioned, I'm Hilary Curran. I'm head of customer experience at Guru, and Guru is a knowledge management platform that does a lot more. But the goal of Guru is to basically require the knowledge that you need to do your job, whether it's agendas or processes or all of those things that you need when you're on the phone or on your computer, that they're provided to you in real time when you need them, versus having to go find them on your own. So that's what our software is trying to help solve. And you can totally learn more about it at getguru.com. I want to tell you a little bit about my team that I run. I'm the head of customer experience, and like Nick said, it spans several different departments. We have an education team, customer success team, and as well as a customer support team. This is just a picture of some of the people on the team, but we're located in 2 different offices, both in Philadelphia and San Francisco. This is actually at a member of our team got married in Philadelphia on a street that she lives on, which is super cool. So just to kind of show you a little bit of example of kind of the personality behind the customer experience at Guru. So today, why are we here, right? We want to learn about what you must consider when crafting digital communication experiences that your customers will love. And so this is a huge part of my job, as so many things so many places that we interact with our customers are digital. And so making that a fun experience for our customers is obviously our top priority. And so I broke it up, sort of all the things that I wanted to talk about into 3 different segments today. The first is evaluating your tech stack. So obviously in a digital world, there's so many different tools and softwares and solutions that you can use in order to provide really great experiences for your customers. And so it's super challenging when you're inundated with all these different options, which ones you should pick, and making sure that they fit your team and your needs. And so talking through some questions that I typically ask myself when I'm evaluating different softwares and tech stacks. The second thing to talk about is ensuring cohesive communication across your team. So, at Guru, we like to say that every customer is also kind of a coworker, right? So we're working with them a lot, whether it's on, a video call or in chat or an email. There's lots of different places that we're talking to them. And it's not, and they may not be talking to our team necessarily just the customer experience team. They're getting emails from marketing. They're getting information from our sales team. They're getting information about events coming up. So they're receiving information from a lot of different pieces of Guru. And so making sure that's a cohesive communication across all of our team at Guru is really, really important to us. So we have a similar voice and tone, and that we can come across as, one big company and not sound like very sporadic, and potentially confuse customers. So super, super important to consider, ensuring a cohesive voice and tone across your company. And then the third thing that I wanted to talk about is obviously the people behind all of those digital experiences. And so empowering your team to harness the information that they know, and all the tools that you've given them to provide really great digital communication experiences for your customers through chat or email or what have you is really, really important. I would say the number one thing that you need to do, right? Because no matter how streamlined you can be across your technologies, the people are really going to be what create that really magical experience for your customers. So before we get started, we just wanted to do a quick poll to see which of these three things you're more interested in learning about, just so I can potentially focus more of my energies on that topic. So Nick's gonna send out the poll really quickly, and see what the answers are.
Okay, so I've activated the poll, and the question is, which of the following are you most interested in learning about? So go ahead and select one. It's evaluating your tech stack. That's A. B, ensuring cohesive communication in voice and in tone. Or C, empowering your team. So I'm going to go ahead and have this poll open, and then once we've collected all the responses, I'll go ahead and close it, and we'll see the results.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we'll see. Looks like
Cool.
we're already getting one particular answer that's standing out. So I'm going to release the poll in just a few short moments. Just going to let it run. It looks like most people have already voted, so that's great. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll right now. And now I'll go ahead and share the results. So it looks like most people are looking forward to learning about ensuring cohesive communication between voice and tone. Now we do have 18% evaluating your tech stack, would like to learn more about that, and then 14% would like to learn more about empowering your team. So very interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tone is super important, and I have a lot of great examples. So hopefully, I also think it's one of those things that transcends across all of these three categories. So kind of excited that everyone chose that one. Not that they're all really, really important. So great, super great. So the first thing I wanted to start with really quickly is, so I have three specific questions that you can ask yourself when you're evaluating your tech stack, right? And your tone is going to play a role in this, obviously, depending on what software and what types of tools you're going to use, can also be different depending on how you want to be perceived and what kind of tone you already have as a company. So the number one question that I typically ask, that we like to ask ourselves at Guru is, on what device, or in what part of a user's workflow are they spending the most time using your product or service? So if most of the time your customers are on their smartphone or on their laptop or on their desktop, depending on how they're engaging with your product or service, it's going to really influence the type of technology that you use to communicate with them digitally. So for instance, at Guru, we monitor all of the usage data for all of these different groups of users. So we have a lot of people that use our web application. And so in doing so, we want to make sure that they can reach out to us in a really seamless way while they're in our web application, without having to go to their email or get on their phone or what have you. So we make it super simple for those users to reach out to us and communicate about any questions or feedback that they have. Whereas if you have a team that may be in the field, right, and they're on their smartphones or on their tablets and they're engaging with your product in a different way, you may want to have a really easy way for them to send information through a specific app. If your users are mainly on the phone all day, having a quick hotline for them to call, or the ability for them to call and receive more information is obviously another kind of digital experience as well. So making sure that where your users are spending the most time in your product is where you're kind of aiming to make it super simple for them to reach out to you. That's the goal. And again, this could also be varied across your user base. So at Guru, we have people who use us across very different use cases, and so we actually tailor a lot of our digital communication experiences to those specific user groups. So we try to find tools that can be a little bit of that can provide some variety. So we may send a chat inside of our application, and then we also may send an email for users that may not go in our application that often. And so, being able to find a solution or to find some software that can allow you for some variety can be really impactful of your business versus only allowing you to do one specific place. Awesome. The next tip that I have or question is kind of what types of information are you actually communicating to your users most, and where would this type of information be best received? A really simple example I can give is when I first started at Guru, we used to ask for an NPS score, and it would pop up inside of our application, depending on how often that user had been in the application. And what we found is actually that people were giving us pretty bad NPS scores or just not responding at all because it was popping up on top of something that they were already trying to do. And so it was actually just becoming a nuisance, right? Like having something that you would hopefully want your users to take time to fill out and give a really thoughtful response kind of like interrupt what they're trying to do and be productive was really annoying for them. And so trying to make sure that the types of information that you're gathering are going to be best received in specific places. So moving an NPS to more of a chat solution or to more of a potentially an email, right, where there's a very simple way for someone to respond, in that case probably was a much better experience for that user. Another thing that we do a lot is ask for feedback. And so doing so either in an open forum, in a chat solution, is going to be really easy for someone to provide feedback for sure. But an even easier way is to do it in our application. So building that stuff into the product and making it super simple for people to thumbs up and thumbs down, or even just type a really quick 2-sentence information gathering is a really easy way for you to gather more feedback than necessarily having to push something out to request information back. So the overall tip is to make it super easy and make it really clear what the call to action is. And this is just going to help over time. It's going to allow you to gather more information that's more thoughtful and obviously make it a much better experience for your customers. Just as some examples, these are 2 examples of things at Guru. So in our application, we have a chat system that pops up, and so we provide a lot of product feedback this way. We also do a lot of announcements about the product inside of our chat. And the reason that we do it inside of our application is because if a user is inside the application, that's when they're going to want to know about things that have changed, not necessarily in an email, right? So if I get an email that says this has changed inside the product, I'm going to have to leave my email where I was probably doing really important work and go back to the product to look at it. But if I'm in the application doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that's a much better place to serve that type of information. And on the flip side, right, if you're sending something about an event or something that you want someone to either do an action for, whether that's add it to their calendar or sign up for something, it's probably going to be better served in an email, whether that's on their phone or on their in a specific email client. But it's going to be a lot better received in a place where they can take an action on it that's going to be connected to where they're actually viewing that information. Awesome. The third question is evaluating your tech stack for what integrations are absolutely necessary and what are nice to haves. And this is really challenging. I think there's so many different types of software out there that integrate with a lot of other tools. And sometimes it can really help you narrow down your search. So if you're definitely needing something to integrate with one of the softwares that your company currently uses, that's going to help you narrow down the list of potential options that you have. The other thing that sort of a tip that I've learned over the years is that while there are a lot of softwares that provide custom integrations and allow you to use webhooks and things to kind of build your own, and if you have a development team that can do that, that's amazing and usually can be super successful. But in my experience, it does take longer than you think. So make sure that you budget a little bit more time for those custom integrations to get built, because there's always little things that pop up or things that necessarily don't sync that you want in the way that you want them to. So just giving yourself a good amount of time to make sure that those integrations are really working well and staying on top of them is really key. But again, over time, you'll kind of figure out which of these are nice to haves and which of these are absolutely necessary. And this is going to be super helpful in figuring out, what kind of software you're going to use to figure out, how you're going to serve these great digital experiences for your customers. Awesome. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of kind of how Guru's tech stack is set up, we have a fair amount of tools that we use for external communication, and then also a good amount that we use internally at Guru. And so just to kind of, break it down based on like the types of tools that we use, we have an in-app chat, which I kind of showed you. We use a mass email communication tool. We have video call software. We have a scheduling tool if customers want to schedule time on our calendars. Makes it super simple for them to do so versus having to go back and forth in an email, which can take a lot of it's just like inefficient time wasted on both sides. We have product guides that are built inside of our application. That's in different software. And then we also just use basic email, right? At the end of the day, that's always kind of there. For internal communication at Guru, we have basic email. We try to use more so our collaboration chat tool, which makes it a lot more transparent across the company and allows for more people to, communicate about specific topics versus sending one-off emails. We also record all of our calls with customers, and this is really great for sharing information about how certain things went with different clients, as well as sharing information and coaching teams internally. So it's really, really helpful. We have a file collaboration tool. We track all of our bugs using a software, and we have a product management tool where we gather all of our feedback and organize it and figure out ways to, build our product roadmap off of the trends that we find. We also obviously have a knowledge management system, and we have a video call tool. So lots of different tools. You don't necessarily have to find one that fits all of these needs. And there's probably a couple tools that you could add to this list. But just to give you an idea of kind of all the different things that we use at Guru, and some of these obviously are kind of serving both purposes. But I think in general, making it super simple for your internal team to navigate and know kind of where certain messages should fall across certain tools is the ultimate goal. And as long as you have a place, at your company where that line is defined, where X types of information should be sent out this way, and this is what this tool is used for, it's going to make it a lot easier for your team as you grow to make sure that people are communicating in the appropriate places. Awesome. So the second topic, which was the number one thing that people voted for me to talk about, is ensuring cohesive communication. And this is a huge part of the customer experience, obviously, and we take it super seriously at Guru across all of our departments. And so there's four things that I think are really important about cohesive communication, and sort of some guides that I think can help you in doing this at your company. So number one is just to sit down and actually define what your voice and tone is, right? Two is providing a training guide for the rest of your team and for all of your new hires so that they can get adjusted to kind of how they should be talking about your company and your product. The third is to develop a really short mission statement. This is something that you can put on the wall. You can have your team, sticky note, put it on their computer, or put it on their phone. But just something for them to kind of use as a guidepost every time they're having an interaction with a customer. And then fourth is just do some activities and get everyone involved and brainstorm different responses based on all of these values that you created. So I'll talk through each of these 4 examples. So defining our voice. Guru spent a lot of time. Our marketing team was the team that led this initiative, but they conducted interviews with a lot of different players at Guru, as well as customers and prospects, to understand kind of what was working, what wasn't working. And so after doing all of that research, they realized that we had a really unique voice and tone. And so in doing so, we put out this definition, right? Our brand has one voice, whether it's a tweet, a pitch, we have a very unique and recognizable sound. And I want to make sure that we're clear and consistent wherever possible, right? And that we put smiles on people's faces. So super simple, but just a way to kind of define the tone and set the stage for the rest of the company. There's actually a blog post, and it's linked in the slide, and you'll get the slides after this, that our head of design and marketing wrote about how we use our brand guide to empower our team. So definitely we'll send that out so that you guys can use that as a resource. So the number 2 thing that I think was really cool that we were able to do at Guru was provide a really intensive training guide for how to use how to talk about Guru and how to talk about our story and our customers, and how to talk about being on the team here pretty specifically. So in this training guide, which goes through a lot of different things, one of the things that was my favorite thing was the ability to kind of call out different values that we care about, right? Obviously, being empathetic is a really big part of customer experience and understanding where the customer is coming from. And then also being empowering, right? And giving them insight into kind of what they should be thinking about coming up, and giving them the tools and resources. And so thinking about those 2 values, like where in your messaging would you lean more toward one or the other? And so at a support conference, right, where you're talking more with your users that are more on the front lines of, working with support teams, you're going to want to have more of an empathetic tone and talk about, like, we understand where you're coming from, and we see, we have a team ourselves that do this exact job. Whereas if you're talking, if you're on a sales call and you're pitching your product, you're going to have a very different type of conversation with those types of people. So being able to frame your product and your services in a way that's going to be most appealing to the audience is obviously really top of mind. Another example of kind of the scale that we have, and we have several other scales, is from serious to witty, right? While we are a really fun company and it's great to work here and we have a really fun culture, you don't want to be goofy and funny all the time, because it's a business. You have to take things seriously. And so if we're tweeting something, it's much more likely that we can be a little more fun and maybe have a joke or something like that. But if you're having a blog post or doing a webinar or talking about a potential product release, you don't want to be really jokey. You want to be serious and take yourself a little bit more seriously about it, because it's a product. People are buying it. People are paying for your services. So just making sure that the rest of the company and your team understand when it's okay to be funny and when it's okay to be a little more serious about what's actually going on. Awesome. The third thing that's super important is developing a mission statement. And this is something that the customer experience team did after the brand guide was released. So we did this for our own team specifically, and other teams at Guru could do this as well. But in general, as a customer experience team, our mission statement was that we speak with our customers through clear communication that is fun, engaging, and consistent. So these are the three sort of takeaways: that we wanted it to be fun because our brand is fun and our company is fun, but we also want to engage people and be consistent, not confusing, not, also very upfront about what's going on. So this was just like a really short mission statement that our team can carry with them when they're on the phone with a customer, when they're interacting with them in a chat, what have you. This is just something that helps guide them, specifically for people that are new. Awesome. The other thing that we did is brainstorm, right? Based on all of these values in our mission statement, what are a bunch of things that we want to try to accomplish? What are our sort of stakes in the ground for how we interact with customers? And then what are some examples of how we can use that value and how we respond? So the four on this slide: familiarity, being adaptable, being encouraging, and being empathetic, right? So if you want to be familiar, make sure that you're talking to the people on the in your digital experiences where you're a friend, right? Like customers are coworkers, and customers are people that we want to develop really strong relationships with. So being familiar and using words that they use, using information that may be topical, right, about stuff that's coming out in pop culture. All those things are really helpful, and it makes people kind of find the human side of the business that we're in. Being super adaptable, right, is also really important. So if someone was you're one point of contact at a customer, and then that person changed, being able to adapt your messaging for that company based on that new champion is really important, and something that we take really seriously here, because we do have a lot of different customers, and as people grow in their careers, there is a lot of change that happens, and so being able to adapt to that change and to different people on different sides of the conversation is really important. Being super encouraging, right? So being just saying like great and thanks and using exclamations and emojis can be super helpful, and also makes people feel like you care. So our support team is constantly using encouraging language. Thank you so much for reaching out, and we really, really appreciate the feedback, not just saying something very canned. And so being really encouraging, like please, please do not hesitate to reach out with any more information that you can provide, or all of these language help motivate and empower your customers. And then being empathetic, right? So specifically, I would say this one is really important when people are reaching out with issues. So like, I understand that this is frustrating. I really appreciate your patience and persistence, and thank you so much for taking the time to even tell us this is happening, and just kind of level setting with that customer that you understand where they're coming from. It's going to change your conversation in its entirety. So taking the time to do that is really, really important, and as something that will make the process of those bug reports and potential issues that have arisen a much more pleasant experience on both sides. And so the other four that I'll talk through, one is yes and, which is an improv kind of mantra. Basically what this means is kind of anticipate the needs of customers before they think about it. So maybe give them something else that they may not know that they need, and just give them something else that you think may be helpful for them or fun for them to see. So for instance, recently we launched a couple of videos at Guru, which are really fun and engaging. And so I've seen our support team, when someone writes in about with a question, they'll answer the question, but then they'll say, hey, we also just have this really cute video that you might want to share with your team. Check it out. And like sending just one other thing just adds a little bit more fun to the conversation and gives them more information than they came looking for. And then there's been some really cool conversations that happen after that. So just having that mindset can help you have even more engaging conversations and provide a much better digital experience than just answering the question and moving on. Being available is obviously the number one thing in support. For support and success teams, you want to make sure that we're able to meet our customers' needs. And so I think one of the ways that we've done this is through being able to schedule calls with our customers really simply and streamline that process, whether it's through like a calendar invite or allowing customers to find time on your own calendar, just making yourself seem super available and also available to change and adapt to when things come up. Just makes your customers have a better experience in general. So that's another sort of value that we've thought through. Honesty is key. If you're not going to release a feature, or if you're not going to come out with something new in your product or service and people have been asking for it, you should be upfront and tell them. And so we always try to make sure that we're very honest and transparent about things that are happening. So even if you don't have a specific answer, just giving them some piece of information that you know is true and that can help them understand that you're trying to solve the problem. So for instance, like I'm going to need our engineering team to look at this, and it might take them a little bit of time, but I promise I will get back to you in X number of days or X number of hours. Like just being transparent and honest in that regard, your response will be much better than just saying like, this will take more time to solve, we will get back to you, and being kind of generic. And the third one, or I guess the sixth one, is being inquisitive and curious. And this kind of goes with, kind of can tag on to the yes and, but it's about asking more questions. So if someone reaches out with a very specific piece of information, trying to really understand what they're getting at and not just responding with the first thing that comes to mind is going to be really helpful for your users and provide a much more thoughtful experience. So making sure that you're really getting to the root of the problem is the number one thing. And again, all this can be transcended across just customer experience, right? In our email messaging, in how we interact with customers at events, in how we and how our leadership team talks about and engages with customers and their teams. All of these things are super important, and like having them set and defined is the first step, kind of, to making sure that there is a cohesive communication strategy across your whole company. Awesome. The third and final thing that we want to talk about is empowering your team. So we have all these tools, right? We have the values, we have the vision and the mission for how you want to talk about your tone. And then we also have our tech stack, right? Like we have certain tools technically that we can use. And so combining all those things, at the end of the day, there's a team behind that's going to actually deliver these messages and create these experiences. And so the first and like easiest thing, I think, is just to adequately address your customer's problem. And so a lot of that has to relate to the knowledge and expertise that you have on your team. And so making sure that they feel empowered with the information that they need to know is going to be the number one thing, right? Giving them the information that will help them adequately address the problem and feel confident in answering that problem. Number one thing. After that, after they feel empowered to answer the question adequately, there's all this great stuff that happens. And so they can predict, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, like predict what the customer may need to know in the future. So if they're talking about, someone potentially leaving their team, then maybe provide them with a bunch more information around, how to offboard a user and how to potentially, change permissioning, all of these things that are going to help them make their life easier, and things that they may not be thinking about right now because they're so focused on this one specific pain point. Providing additional information and being more, being curious, asking more questions. So empowering your team to first address the problem, but then giving them the space to, engage a little bit more deeply is super helpful. And so the number one thing, a sort of tip that I have around this and kind of how you can, I think, help motivate the team to do 2, 3, and 4 is to think about how you measure your your success on a customer experience team. And so there's one specific metric around like handle time of tickets and how long it takes to close out certain problems. And this is has been a metric that a lot of teams have used over time, and it is really important, right? You want to make sure that you don't have bugs and things lingering for a really long time. That being said, it's also important to think about, maybe there is some value in having a little bit of a longer conversation with a customer, and that customer may have reached out initially about a bug, but it could have turned into a totally different conversation if the support person had reached out with more information and then further engaged them and then provided more questions. They may have totally changed that ticket request into more of just a conversation with the person, a digital experience that allowed the customer to learn a lot more about your company and also become more engaged and potentially either cross-sell your product, upgrade, all these great things that can happen. So handle time may not be the most important metric for that specific team. So just making sure that you're aware of that and your team isn't trying so hard to answer the question as quickly as possible and get off the phone or get off the computer in that conversation, because they know that that's a metric that they're being measured on. So this is just something that we try to do at Guru. It's important to close out tickets and to, get information moving through a process, but taking time to actually engage with the customer is obviously the end goal. I have an example of how this would work. So for instance, someone could say, hey, my team is trying to do X and we can't figure out how to do so. I need some help, right? And the person could respond and say, happy to help. Like, if you want to do X, like click here, then select ABC, read more information on our help center here. And they may continue to talk, right? But most of the time, this conversation is going to end, right? It's going to end pretty quickly, and they're going to say, thanks so much. Like, you told me exactly how to do what I asked for. Now, a much more intense conversation that will provide a much better digital experience could go in this sort of way. And this is what we typically see, and we try to train our users, our team at Guru to do. So exact same question, right? Hi there, my team is trying to do X and we can't figure out how to do it. Any help? And so we can say like, hey, yeah, happy to help, totally excited to help you. To make sure I totally understand your answer or totally understand your question, what are you hoping to solve by doing X, right? Like what is the pain point that you're striving to solve? And maybe that's actually the question that you're trying to ask. And usually what happens when we ask this question or when we ask these open-ended questions is we get so much more information that we did not expect. And so, for instance, in this case, we have a lot of new team members starting next week, and we want to make sure Y doesn't happen once you give them access. So in this case, right, maybe Y is solved by a totally different thing than X. And so in this example, I just have like, thank you so much for clarifying. We actually recommend doing A, which prevents Y from ever happening again. Doing X is a great thing to do, and here's how to do that. But in the short term, in the long term, it's not going to solve your problem, right? So doing A is probably going to be the best thing. And so then the customer learns that this totally different thing that they didn't even know existed, and their pain point, the main thing that they're trying to solve, is actually completed, and their knowledge of the product is increased. And then we provide them more information that they didn't even think about. So fantastic. Here's an onboarding guide that may be useful for your new hires, right? Because we know that they're adding new people to their team, and then encouraging them, obviously, that telling them that we're available. Feel free to reach out if you need anything else or any training tips. We're here for you. So totally different conversation that happened with the exact same kind of outreach. And so just hopefully this is a good example. You guys can kind of see how all those values and that type of tone, how that can be applied to a very common thing that happens where someone reaches out with a very specific question. Awesome. The last thing about empowering your team is, I think, to do it together in person. So practice, right? At Guru, we actually conducted an improv session. I have a picture actually on the slide. This is someone on our team. His name's Yael McHugh. He's awesome, and he did improv for a long time. So he did an improv session. This is us like getting in the mode. So we were like getting loosened up. But basically, we did an improv session where some people were customers, some people were prospects, some people were actually support agents or on a customer success team, and we walked through all the problems, the worst case scenarios, the best case scenarios, and how you would handle those scenarios. And in doing so, it's pretty remarkable to see like customers or to see people on the team kind of stand up and say, oh my God, I've heard the exact same thing that you have. I never knew that you had the same problem happen to you. And then you hear really different examples of how you can respond to that. And the team is learning from each other and learning how to better explain issues, how to more quickly get to the root of the problem every time you practice. And so doing this in a group setting, whether you're on the phone or remote or have a team spread across the country, there's lots of ways you can do this, but this has been a really great thing that our team has tried to do, and it's helped a lot with onboarding and a lot with just empowering users with a little bit more, a little bit more practice with a real human on the other side. The third thing, or the last thing around like exercises that you can do is there's a really cool model, and this is more around a way to kind of think about sharing information and solving problems. There's a service innovation.org is a consortium of knowledge, and there's a practice called knowledge-centered service, KCS, and one of their sort of frameworks is called intelligence swarming. And we try to practice this at Guru on our customer experience team. What this means is, the older model, this is just a visual example, was that, there's an expert on the team that has all this information, and then you sort of train people over time to learn some pieces of that information. And when you're solving a problem or engaging with a customer, if you don't know the answer, you push it up to the next tier, or you push it up to the next person. And so there's this silo, a lot of silos that happens where if I don't have the answer, I just push it on, and I'm not learning anything. I may see how they solved it and be able to apply it a little bit to future cases, but there's still this like ladder of people, and there's not a lot of collaboration happening. So with intelligence swarming, and we practice this at Guru on the customer experience team, this allows a lot more people on the team to contribute to the conversation and help solve the problem. And it's been pretty remarkable in the types of responses that we get from this, and like the really intuitive and kind of innovative ways that we can solve problems together. And so the way that we do this is through our collaboration chat tool. So if there's an issue that a support agent can't solve, they'll post it in a chat for the entire company to see. And when this happens, anyone on the company at Guru can go in and respond with maybe the answer that they know is super simple, or they can say, actually, 7 other customers have asked about this when I've had calls with them, or so-and-so was asking this yesterday. And then constantly more and more people will add on that and thread on that, and we'll create this really unique piece of information around how to solve the problem, but also a lot more information around the problem that's being repeated across several different places where we probably wouldn't have known that it existed before. And so our CTO can chime in with maybe a technical response. Our marketing team can chime in with something that they're working on that may be, that potentially could be influenced by this bug or this feedback that we've received. And so it kind of helps kind of also transcend the ability to solve the problem, but also make sure that the rest of the company is aware of what's going on, and that's going to help them and inform all the decisions that they're making in their own departments. And so allowing this like intelligence to, this like ability to communicate across a network of people and pull from their expertise in solving these problems, getting rid of all these tiers of support has been huge for us, and creates a much better, I think, communication experience for our customers, because they're getting, really great information. Like our support team can say, actually, I just talked to the head of our product team, and they said, while we don't have this now, we're going to have it soon. Or I just talked to our marketing team, and they're going to update our website tomorrow. So being able to have those connections really quickly is really, really cool, and it makes your teams just seem a lot more on top of what's going on inside the company. Awesome. So these are the 3 things that we talked about today. Obviously, evaluating your tech stack, super important, ensuring cohesive communication, and empowering your team. And so, I have these are like sort of like a quick recap of what those sort of takeaways could be. But I'm also really curious, I know everyone voted mostly on ensuring cohesive communication, but curious kind of what you're most excited to work on moving forward now that we've talked through these 3 different topics.
Okay, so I've activated the second poll, and this one's more forward looking. What are you most excited to work on moving forward? And so again, the 3 answers are going to be A, evaluating your tech stack, B, ensuring cohesive communication through voice and tone, or C, of course, empowering your team. So I'll go ahead and leave the poll open, and as we're receiving the responses, looks like there's a slight difference in the answers. Should be pretty interesting as we're collecting the responses, seeing how this all fleshes out. Very cool to see how after this presentation, perhaps some people's perceptions may change. But yeah, so we'll have the poll run just for a little bit longer, just a few more short moments, and then I'll be closing it very shortly. So, okay, so I'll be closing it now. And then here are the responses that we received. So again, still ensuring cohesive communication through voice and tone is still going to be the most excited thing that most of our attendees will be working on moving forward. 67% of them now. But it looks like now there was a slight shift. So now it looks like some people in the audience are now looking to empower their team a little bit more, and then perhaps evaluating our tech stack still might not be on some of our radar, but still important to know.
Awesome. That's really, really helpful.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and, okay.
Cool. Well, that's all the information I have. I know it's hard to listen to someone talk for more than 15 minutes plus. But I really, really appreciate everyone talking to me or listening today to me talk, and obviously sharing a ton of information that we've learned at Guru as a team. But I think we're going to open it up for questions now. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Hilary, for today's presentation. I did want to thank the audience for tuning in so far. I do understand if you do need to run, but just remember that there will be one more session about digital transformation and customer experience coming up that you won't want to miss. So, okay, with our time remaining, I'm going to go ahead and cover some audience questions. And the first one that we have, the audience is asking, does the communication channel affect the way that you communicate and write? So I know that previously we had been talking about making sure that the communication is cohesive. So the audience is asking, does this change based on the communication channel? For example, email versus text, chat, social media, and if
Totally.
so, what kinds of general guidelines or best practices might be depending on some of these communication channels?
Yep, totally. I would say, in email, it's probably an easier place to be a little bit more verbose. Not that people want to read long emails, but being able to explain more information, right? Provide it, if you're going to show like a list of all the new features that you're coming out with, or, maybe there's a really big update to your product that has a lot of different bells and whistles and you want to detail each of those things. Doing that in an email is probably, a really great place to do it versus in a chat where you don't have a lot of real estate, like just physically, right? If you're trying to gather feedback on one specific thing and there's just like a B, or C, doing that in email, it may not be, you may not get as many responses unless you were doing it in app or in a chat where someone could just open it up really quickly and click it. Where if they have to go into their email, open the email, then click reply, all of that, thinking about the number of clicks people have to go through to respond is important. But yeah, I think depending on what kind of message you're trying to send, if it's a link to a big document, you can tweet that out with a bit.ly and make it really simple. But just being super cognizant about how much information you're trying to share, and like how much time the user is going to spend looking at it. So if it's something that they need to spend a lot of time reading through, email may be better. But if it's just something that's really quick and easy and has a really quick call to action, there's lots of different ways that you can send that out.
Okay, and that makes sense, given that, depending on which communication channel the customer reached out to you, chances are that'll kind of already cue you in as to how immediate of a response they may need, or if it's going to be a response that may require a little bit more explaining. So like you mentioned,
Totally.
verbose. So for example, if a customer reaches out to you via Twitter with, say a question that requires a little bit more support, and I'm just guessing here, would it make sense to in the tweet to just say, hey, please reach out to us via email here, and then
Correct.
that email channel? Okay.
Yeah, we actually have our chat tool also connects to our support email, which is super. It's really nice because it all lives in one place. You don't have to have an email for like a place to answer all the email support requests, and then also have chat support requests. So it all kind of lives in the same place. And then when you respond to that chat or that email, it's all in the same place in the response. So if someone is writing in through a chat. Through our chat inside of our web application, whenever we respond, it will show up in the chat. But if they're reaching out to our email and we respond inside of the same software, it will send them an email. So it just kind of mirrors whichever way they've reached out to us.
Yeah, and that also just sort of circles back to evaluating your tech stacks and making and it's just kind of this this noticeable trend to where now there's software out there that's integrating all these different channels into one. So
Right.
like for example, you mentioned your software where just in the chat it can respond to various different channels all in the one same place, and we're starting to see that with many sort of different services moving forward. So, definitely just going back to, one of your three main points of evaluating tech stack and, with that cohesive communication, this is all just, this particular question just kind of touches on both of those main points from your presentation.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, great. So the next question the audience is asking, you mentioned that handle time isn't a good metric to measure when it comes to some of these like customer support communications. What might be some metrics that would be useful to measure within some of these types of communications?
Of course. So our chat solution and a lot of these, a lot of support solutions offer the ability to kind of immediately kind of pull the user with kind of like, please rate this response. And so we take that really seriously. The one that we use just has an emoji, basically like a frowny face, all the way up to like a hard eye face. Being able for that person to quickly after the conversation has ended and they've received the information that they requested, for them to say like, yeah, it was an awesome conversation, or no, it was kind of okay, or actually I didn't get anything that I wanted from this person and I really was disappointed. Having that ability to just respond really quickly is really helpful. And then if, let's say you have 1,000 conversations a day, if 90% of them are receiving really great conversations and rating their conversations as high, high engagement and really engaging with our team, then we feel like we're doing a good job. So I think measuring kind of the rate of it's sort of like an NPS, right? Like how much people are actually excited about the information that you're sharing with them. And a lot of these also allow a user to respond with very specific information, so they can type information. And this has been really great as a management tool. So I'm surprised how many people actually fill this in. So if our support team closes out a ticket or closes out a chat, and the person responds, they'll often say like, so and so on your team is amazing. Like you should give them a raise. They did like way more than I thought they would, or someone's on your team provided really great examples. Like I think next time it'd be great if you had more videos, and just allowing them to have that little space where they can give you a little bit more information and feedback. A lot of people will take us up on it, and we get some cool responses in that way. So yeah, I would say like kind of just gauging how many like really great conversations you have versus customers that are unhappy. NPS is a huge one that we also do inside of our application, which just is the very common like, how likely are you to refer this product to someone else. The other thing that we do for support and for customer success is kind of the adoption of our product. So we have metrics just very basic around how many people who are using a product at a certain customer are actually engaging with the product versus just have a license and never log in. And so using that as a form of a metric that our team can look to and say, out of all my customers, this percentage are actually engaging with the tool every day or every month, is really helpful and helps kind of encourage the team to reach out to those customers with really bad metrics to make sure that they're understanding all the potential that they have with the solution, and that they're kind of going to be re-engaged in different ways. So adoption, NPS, kind of your vibe about a conversation, whether it was good or bad. It's also important just to kind of track the number of people that reach out. If that goes up or down, there's usually a kind of reason. It may be related to an event you're having or a release that you had, so it may not be a bad thing if a lot of people are reaching out, but it could also inform you that you maybe need to provide more information in a certain announcement if everyone's asking the same question. So just basic metrics around like the number of conversations is important too.
Okay, so so to recap, the number of times customers reach out to you, that's certainly one metric to
Right.
definitely have. NPS you mentioned. Now CSAT, that sounds like what you were mentioning before with
Yeah.
customer
Mm-hmm.
walk away from this conversation, customer satisfaction. Now that kind of
Exactly.
score as well. Okay, yeah, great. And then of course you mentioned adoption as well. So
Mhm.
now when you say adoption, do you mean the customer took that information and used it in an actionable way, or?
So this would be more so like if the customer who is reaching out is actually using our product. So if they reach out and say that they're, have all these questions, and then we can go in and see that they never logged in, um,
Got it.
then that's not a good thing, right? But there's also ways. There's lots of software that allows you to kind of, if you do send links, you can see if people have clicked those links, or and there's a lot of data around that can be super helpful. From our support side, we usually are just trying to get them to solve. You usually know if you've solved the problem or not, because if you haven't, they're going to reach out again. So trying to prevent like the repeat questions is really really important, but also trying to make sure that they're having an enjoyable experience, regardless if they don't, if maybe they just don't get it the first time, and trying to make sure that it's really clear kind of how to address the problem that they're trying to solve.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for that response. That was very informative, and now I think I'm able to take something from this and apply it to our
Oh,
own.
cool.
So, yeah. And then, okay, so for the last question, this one's just a little bit more fun, it looks like. So
Hmm.
what would be the best practices for using emojis in communications?
So, as someone who loves emojis, I'm probably not a very good. Well, I may be a little bit more biased, but I think emojis are really helpful. Now, if I'm sending an email to someone at a client who isn't really having a great experience, or I'm trying to improve their experience, I'm probably not going to send an emoji in that email if I'm trying to be really serious. And it's a very important email. I wouldn't say don't send emojis in emails unless it's a very fun conversation and very lighthearted. As far as using them in our support chat, I think chat's a little bit more forgiving as far as emojis, and it also can help convey just emotion. So if our support team has questions, especially when we have certain people that reach out to our team more often, just because they know that our support team is always available, and so they develop relationships with our customers online, just like you would in a text message with a friend. And so knowing certain people react and engage in certain ways is going to help you tailor your amount of emojis appropriately, and also being able to mirror that with customers. So if a customer reaches out and uses an emoji, it kind of is giving you the green light to use one in return, right? So if a customer has a really kind of goofy question, and they react with and they add an emoji that's kind of like a tongue sticking out, which just as an example, right? That's like fair game to add whatever emoji you want. You can send a GIF back. You could send something fun, because they obviously are saying like, "Hey, I have this issue," but like, don't really. It's not a huge deal. I'm just asking you. But if someone reaches out and it's very direct, probably not the best to send an emoji with like a thumbs up or anything, just because it may be taken as like a little lighthearted. So I would say you kind of have to read the room, the chat room, right, in that conversation. I use emojis a lot to separate out information, just to make it clear. So if there's like something about events, I'll put like a calendar emoji, more so just for a visual awareness, like in an email with my team, or an email with a customer. Like, these are the things that you need to do next week, and have kind of like a checkbox, or these are having those kind of visual aids is also really helpful. And I think emojis have kind of evolved into that across a lot of the collaboration tools that we use. But in general, I'd say, like, kind of figure out how the customer is going to react, and if they've used them, probably feel free to use them back, but don't overdo it. I wouldn't put a bunch of emojis in. I would say maybe try to limit it to 3 or 5 if you have a really long email, and typically in a chat I wouldn't use more than one.
Okay, and that all makes sense, and definitely with the point that, if the customer leads with an emoji first, that kind of cues in the person on the customer support side to respond in kind, and it's interesting because it makes sense. I've seen clearly, on social media, there's a lot of emojis, and then an email tends to depend on the conversation, like you mentioned, but in
Hmm.
chat, that's definitely when you say, how friends communicate with each other in text or in their own chats, and then how just some of that can also blend into a customer support chat, and how that customer communicates to the company. And that'll prompt
Right.
whether or not the customer support person can respond with that. And then also you mentioned GIFs, and I'd never really thought to respond with a GIF or anything. Uh, but
Yeah,
that's
we we
something.
we're, we love gifts here at Guru, and I don't know if it's a trend internally, But we have a lot of customers, and our chat solution also allows you to use GIFs. But a lot of our customers will respond with GIFs that say like "thank you" or "have a good day," and they have really fun, images and things moving. But I think it can provide like a fun kind of alternative to an emoji or a response. A lot of times we'll have if someone reaches out to our team with really great feedback, we'll respond with a gift that's like "you're the best," and it's like a movie or something, just to add some humor and brighten their day up a little bit. We've actually had customers create gifs with different like kind of words on the gift that are related to our product, which is fun. So yeah, there's lots of cool things you can do with gifts, so I wouldn't be afraid. But yeah, just like anything, like in moderation.
Sure, of course. And I guess as a follow-up to this, what about memes?
Memes, yeah, memes I would say are similar to similar to GIFs. People have used them in similar ways. Yeah, I think if the customer is fun and they like to use them, we've had customers who use a lot of GIFs and memes in their training decks, and when they're talking about our product or training their team, they think it's a fun way to kind of engage users and make people laugh. So totally cool.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was very informative, and I'm glad I was able to learn a little bit more about designing the best digital communication experiences for our customers. So that's all we'll be covering for today. I hope you in the audience had half as much fun as I did. I do want to give thanks to Hilary for giving a great presentation today. I also want to give thanks to our sponsor Quadient and all of you for attending. I'm Nicholas Rodriguez, and you can find Customer Experience Update on Twitter at CX Update, and you can find Customer Contact Central on Twitter at CUST_contact. So we have one more session after this, and you can find the full schedule of this webinar series along with the links to access all of the sessions at the URLs listed on the slides. So thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.